Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, get ready because we're about to plunge into a stack of sources that connects some, well, truly surprising dots.
Yeah, it's quite a ride.
We're kicking off way back in the Middle Ages, believe it or not, and we'll end up deep inside your brain. We're exploring how things like ancient music theory and modern political beliefs might actually be shaped by the same, fundamental mechanisms.
It really is a fascinating journey. It reveals how pattern recognition, reward systems, these ancient structures sort of hidden deep within us,
Yeah.
how they influence maybe not just whether you like a song, but maybe how you form and hold on to your most basic convictions.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack these sources, try to understand this underlying architecture, how the brain responds to patterns, patterns that are predictable, but maybe also a little surprising, and the dopamine hits that come with that.
And how that could influence, well, everything from enjoying a symphony to getting completely locked into your political
So
viewpoint.
it's like looking at the code, maybe the code running underneath perception and behavior.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this, and we're starting not with brain scans, surprisingly, but with medieval education, the liberal arts structure.
Right. And this wasn't just, memorizing stuff. It was about building the mental tools to understand the world.
Yeah.
And it had two main parts, traditionally.
First up, the trivium. This was like the foundation level, focused on language, how we structure thought.
Exactly. It was grammar, so understanding language itself,
Huh.
then logic, the rules of good reasoning, and rhetoric, the art of using language well to communicate, to persuade.
And isn't trivial from trivium, like meeting place of three roads? Originally meant foundational knowledge, stuff everyone knew.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of ironic now, isn't it, given how crucial clear language, logic, and good communication actually are. Anyway, after the trivium, you had the quadrivium, the upper level, four subjects here.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for what we're talking about today. The
Yeah.
quadrivium was all about mathematical disciplines.
Yes, the study of quantity. So you had arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and here's the surprise for many people today, music.
Hold on, music was considered a math subject, like alongside geometry and numbers.
Absolutely. It wasn't
Huh.
about, playing an instrument beautifully or expressing deep emotions. Not in this context. It's place there, which scholars like Boethius and Cassiodorus formalized, drawing on much older Greek ideas from Pythagoras.
Mm.
It was about musical proportions, harmonics, the mathematical ratios behind sounds that, well, sound good together.
So they saw math in the music.
They believed these numerical patterns in music actually mirrored the underlying harmony of the cosmos itself. It was profound stuff.
Okay, so you could kind of map the trivium onto, say, modern liberal arts language, philosophy, communications, maybe?
Roughly, yeah.
And the quadrivium sounds like the ancestor of our STEM fields. Math, physics, astronomy.
That's a great way to think about it. It shows these medieval thinkers saw this basic split, right, between disciplines dealing with, let's say, meaning and representation, the trivium, and those dealing with measurement, systems, quantitative stuff, the quadrivium.
That humanities versus sciences distinction, it still echoes today in universities.
It really does.
But music obviously didn't stay in the math department. I mean, today it's overwhelmingly seen as an art. How did it make that jump from mathematical harmony to, well, emotional expression?
Well, it was a gradual shift, lots of factors involved. You had the Romantic movement, 19th century, really pushing individual feeling over rigid form.
Right, emotion becomes key.
Exactly. Then Expressionism took that even further. Philosophers like Kant started separating beauty, aesthetic beauty, from objective mathematical order. And technology played a part too. Recordings made music more accessible, more personal.
So it became less this abstract study, more about individual experience.
Precisely. It kind of seemed to leave its mathematical roots behind, at least in popular perception.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. Music feels emotional, so we classify it as art. But, and this is the crucial twist our sources bring in from neuroscience, that emotional power, it isn't actually separate from the structure. It seems to emerge from it.
Exactly. Modern brain science sort of confirms the medieval insight about structure's importance, but adds the how that structure hits us emotionally. Our brains are fundamentally prediction machines
Constantly guessing what comes next.
all the time. And music gives them these fantastic patterns to work with.
Like predicting the beat, knowing when that next chord should land.
Uh-huh. Your brain's making these split-second predictions. When they're met, or sometimes even better, when they're slightly violated, but in a clever way that still feels right.
The surprise element.
Yeah. A part of your brain, the nucleus accumbens, key part of your reward system, it releases dopamine.
So that aha or yes feeling when a melody resolves, that's literally a chemical reward for processing the pattern correctly.
A big part of it, yes. And it's not just prediction. Your brain waves can actually start to synchronize with the music's rhythm. It's called entrainment.
Like physically getting in sync?
Kind of. Think of it as your brain sort of latching onto the beat. And this directly affects your autonomic nervous system, heart rate, breathing. It connects the mathematical regularity of rhythm to your physical and emotional state.
Wow. Okay. And those simple musical ratios you mentioned earlier, like octaves, fifths.
Well, the brain seems to process the simplest frequency ratios, like 2.1 for an octave, 3.2 for a perfect fifth, really efficiently. It's like they're easy on the ears, or rather, easy on the auditory cortex.
Like comfort food for the brain.
Sort of. And that processing efficiency itself seems to generate a positive emotional response. Constant intervals, built on these simple ratios, they light up different neural networks linked to pleasantness compared to dissonant intervals, which are more complex mathematically.
So the brain finds mathematical simplicity in sound rewarding, or just easier in a good way.
That seems to be a key element. But music isn't perfectly simple either, right? It's not just predictable patterns.
Oh, that would be boring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It often incorporates patterns found in nature, like the rhythm of waves or wind rustling leaves. Mathematically, these sometimes involve things called 1F noise or fractal patterns.
Okay, getting technical now.
Yeah. But the point is, these natural-sounding patterns create a kind of sweet spot for the brain. Complex enough to hold interest, but structured enough not to just be random noise. The brain likes moderate algorithmic complexity, it seems.
So music that echoes these natural mathematical patterns just feels right to us on a deep level. There are researchers digging into this, right? Neuroaesthetics.
Oh, yeah. People like David Huron, Daniel Levitin, and Anirudh Patel, they're really exploring this link between musical structure and the brain's response.
And their work basically reinforces this idea. The emotional punch of music isn't magic, it's built on that mathematical scaffold.
That structure is precisely why it can convey such deep emotional meaning. It provides the framework.
Okay, this is where the sources take a really big turn and ask maybe the most provocative question.
Right.
If music's mathematical structure, these patterns, trigger these powerful reward systems, could similar mechanisms be at play when our brains process ideological patterns? Things like, say, religious beliefs or political convictions.
That's the controversial but really compelling link the research suggests might exist.
You mean like confirmation bias,
Ah.
that little good feeling you get when you hear something you already agree with?
Basically, yes. Studies using fMRI scans actually show activation in the ventral striatum, another part of that reward circuit, when people encounter information confirming their existing beliefs.
So that little yes feeling isn't just psychological, it's chemical.
Your brain is literally giving you a little dopamine treat for confirming its existing pattern. It's wiring you to, like, having your views validated, regardless of whether they're objectively true or not.
The flip side, hearing something that challenges your core beliefs, does that feel bad, like neurally?
In a way, yeah. It seems contradictory information creates a kind of neural dissonance, like a clashing chord in your mind. It shows up in areas like the anterior cingulate cortex,
The brain's error detector.
sort of its internal uh-oh or this doesn't fit signal, and this can actually trigger physical stress responses, feelings of discomfort. The brain really wants to resolve that dissonance, often by just, well, rejecting the conflicting info.
So our brains are sort of hardwired to seek confirmation and avoid contradiction, almost independent of the actual facts.
That's the pretty unsettling implication, yeah. There's research by Jonas Kaplan, for example, showing that when people hear political statements they strongly agree with, their brain responses actually synchronize with others who agree.
like group entrainment, but with ideas.
Exactly. It creates this shared, almost physically felt sense of rightness or truth. Very similar to how rhythm can synchronize a crowd physically and emotionally. That feeling of truth in a belief might partly come from this shared synchronized pattern matching.
And the sources mention other studies too, like threats to political beliefs lighting up brain areas associated with physical threats.
And others suggesting that when strong partisans evaluate negative information about their own side, the brain areas linked to critical reasoning seem to, well, quiet down.
Turn off the fact checker, basically.
It suggests that what we experience as recognizing truth in these ideological areas might often be our brain finding a match. An incoming pattern fits a preferred existing pattern. That match satisfies the algorithm, gives a reward signal, and it feels like truth, but it's not necessarily a rational assessment.
Now, studying this must be way harder than studying music, right? Culture, language, ethics.
Oh, absolutely. Huge challenges. Cultural variations, isolating variables, avoiding bias, political sensitivity. It's much messier than analyzing responses to C major chords. But the underlying proposed neural mechanisms show these striking parallels.
What's really mind-bending, though, is the idea that maybe religious and political systems didn't need fMRI scanners. That over centuries, just through trial and error, they figured out how to tap into these mechanisms.
That's the profound suggestion, yes, that they intuitively discovered how to leverage these pattern recognition and reward systems.
So all the music and ritual in religion, it's not just like nice decorations.
Far from it, according to this view. Think about religious rituals. Gregorian chants, for example, their structure can induce states of entrainment, maybe making people more open to suggestion.
Call and response.
Gets the group physically and neurally synchronized. Repetitive prayers or mantras create predictable mental states through rhythm. And musical crescendos are often perfectly timed with key doctrinal points to amplify the emotional impact, creating a feeling of revelation tied directly to the structure.
The sources point to something like the Catholic Mass as almost a kind of refined algorithm, developed over centuries to foster commitment, emotional connection, transcendence, all through highly structured multisensory pattern reinforcement.
And you see parallels in politics too, right? Campaign songs build group identity through shared rhythm and melody, chanting.
Lock her up, or yes, we can.
Exactly. It creates neural synchrony, that feeling of us. Speeches often use musical cadence. Rhythm, think Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream. The structure is incredibly powerful. Applause lines in speeches. They function like rhythmic punctuation, maybe triggering collective dopamine hits.
It's pretty sobering when you think about historical figures who seem to get this intuitively. The sources quote Hitler from Mein Kampf.
Yeah, where he talks about propaganda needing to be one-sided, presenting only the truth favorable to the cause, because the masses have, in his words, restricted receptive powers and feeble understanding. It's chilling.
And he didn't just say it. He apparently designed those massive rallies with Wagnerian sort of orchestration in mind, to manipulate emotions directly.
He understood, it seems, that for huge crowds, it wasn't about rational argument. It was about hitting them emotionally, viscerally, much like powerful music does.
And now modern digital technology just puts this on steroids.
Oh, absolutely. Algorithms curate your feeds to deliver personalized emotional music content, perfectly tuned to resonate with your existing ideological patterns, to deliver those confirmation rewards constantly.
A/B testing finds the perfect triggers.
Exactly. Platforms test which emotional buttons, which rhythms of outrage or validation keep you hooked. Social media design exploits these reward loops, especially the variable reward schedule, the unpredictable timing of likes, comments, shares, finding that perfect post.
Like a slot machine.
Precisely like a slot machine. It's designed to be addictive by exploiting how our dopamine system responds to unpredictable rewards. They're delivering personalized ideological music straight to the brain's reward centers, 244/7.
Okay, this focus on dopamine, reward cycles, patterns, it sounds disturbingly like something else. Doesn't this naturally lead to thinking about addiction?
It absolutely does. And this is maybe one of the most critical and maybe uncomfortable insights from these sources, that these systems, deeply held ideologies, and especially the way modern social media is engineered, seem to operate along the same neurobiological pathways as addiction. Substance addiction, behavioral addiction.
Addiction. That sounds really strong for just scrolling online or believing strongly in something.
Well, look at the classic patterns of addiction. See how they map. You've got the dopaminergic cycle, anticipating a reward, validation, confirmation, feeling part of the group, then getting that quick hit.
Okay.
Then diminishing returns, needing more or more intense input for the same feeling. That's tolerance. And withdrawal, feeling anxious, angry, lost when you're cut off from the source or your beliefs are fundamentally challenged.
So tolerance could look like needing increasingly extreme viewpoints or content to get that same buzz of certainty or outrage.
Exactly. And withdrawal can be genuine distress when cut off from the reinforcing online community or when core beliefs face serious threats. You see, craving that compulsive need to check the feed, find the next fix, preoccupation.
And continued engagement despite negative consequences, like sacrificing relationships, maybe job stuff, mental well-being, all for the ideology or the online validation.
That maps directly onto addiction criteria. And that variable reward schedule we mentioned, the unpredictable hits on social media, that's known to be incredibly powerful in driving addictive behavior. Pulling down to refresh your feed is like pulling the lever on a slot machine, waiting for that unpredictable reward.
So it's not just that social media is engaging, it's potentially engineered, combining social validation, identity, tribalism, even outrage, into this potent digital dopamine delivery system, designed for maximum stickiness.
Maximum addictive potential, arguably. And as we touched on, maybe some older systems, like certain religious structures, stumbled onto similar mechanisms over time. The confession-absolution cycle as a predictable reward loop. Regular required attendance preventing withdrawal from the community reinforcement, social pressure amplifying the rewards of belonging.
So this idea of ideological addiction, it could help explain things that seem totally irrational otherwise, like why facts just bounce off some people, or why they seek out more and more extreme stuff.
It suggests you might not just be dealing with bad logic or misinformation. You could be up against something more like a neurological dependency on certain patterns and the rewards they bring.
Which means just arguing rationally might not work.
It might be like trying to rationally argue someone out of a substance addiction. The underlying mechanisms might be too powerful. It suggests maybe approaches from addiction therapy, cognitive behavioral techniques, maybe gradual exposure, community support might be more relevant than we think for tackling extreme polarization or online radicalization. It reframes the problem.
But here's the final, really sobering kicker from the sources. Just knowing about all this, being aware of the mechanisms, it doesn't necessarily make you immune.
No, that's the tough part. Addiction researchers themselves can struggle with, say, smartphone addiction, even knowing exactly how it works neurologically. Rational awareness only gives you partial protection, maybe.
Knowing the algorithm doesn't automatically free you.
It seems not. The challenge isn't just fighting bad ideas with good ideas. It might be fighting deeply ingrained, reward-driven, potentially dependent responses wired into our brains.
Wow. Okay, so we've gone from medieval classrooms, through the math hidden in music, into the neuroscience of how our brains latch onto patterns, whether it's sound waves or political slogans or social media posts, all driven by these powerful reward systems.
It really underscores this fundamental thing about our brains. They are relentless pattern seekers and reward chasers across just about every domain imaginable, from simple sound ratios to complex ideologies.
And it leaves you, the listener, with this thought, maybe. If your brain processes ideological patterns using reward mechanisms similar to those for music, and if knowing this doesn't automatically shield you, what does that really mean for how you take in information, how you engage in debates, how you navigate this world saturated with engineered patterns?
Yeah. Are you genuinely seeking understanding? Or are you, maybe unconsciously, just chasing the next satisfying dopamine hit from a pattern that feels comfortably like home?